All right, so we're here to talk about kindness. When I got this assignment from Gary, I thought, oh boy, that is a loaded word, isn't it? There's just, hi Tom, there's just so much packed into that one word. And yet it was such a simplistic word that as I was doing research on this to see if I could find like what's the psychological definition of kindness, what is the standard dictionary definition of kindness, I started to find some pretty interesting things. And so I spent a few weeks sort of teasing out what I thought about kindness and what I thought kindness was and how it gets presented. So the first thing I'm going to do is read you the definition of kindness from the dictionary. It says, for one, the quality or state of being kind, okay? Treating people with kindness and respect. That's definition one. Definition two is a kind deed or a favor. And I found that really interesting because the word favor then takes me into a whole nother can of worms, because that's an interesting flavor to kindness. And the third is affection. Okay, so it can be treating people with kindness and respect, it can be a favor, or it can be affection. So in Psychology Today, they said, science has now shown that devoting resources to others rather than having more and more for yourself brings about lasting well-being. And this was in reference to kindness. And so I started thinking about that, and I started to think about our consumer culture, which is all about having more for yourself, right? And how having more for yourself means there's less for other people. That's how it's set up. And so if you're devoting resources to others instead of yourself, you're basically going against the cultural norm, okay? A lot of people who I think consider themselves kind would never think about giving $1 to a homeless person. I've spoken to many, many, many people who are quite well off, who refuse to give money to homeless people. And when I ask them why, they say, oh, it's just a big scam. You know, they go home at night and they live in a nice house and, you know, it's a big scam. And I'm like, you know, if somebody's going to stand outside in 20 below zero weather for 5 hours, I'm going to consider that work. I'm going to give them some money. That's a job, whether you think it is or not. So there's this idea that some people deserve kindness more than others, right? If you have a judgment about somebody, that can prevent you from being kind. So my friend who won't give $1 to a homeless person because she once read an article that said people were scamming, you know, drivers for their dollars, and they actually lived in a nice house. That was enough for her so that every homeless person was scamming and she wasn't going to give any money. And I find it interesting that we get to place a value on whether somebody deserves kindness or doesn't deserve kindness. In a consumer culture, kindness is discouraged because it prevents the drive to accumulate more and more at the expense of others. And when I talk about the expense of others, I'm talking about the environment as well. You know, consumerism is not good for the environment. So kindness is not good for business in a rogue capitalistic society. And I call what we're living in right now is rogue capitalism, plain and simple. There is nothing fair and equitable about it. So if you have a judgment about somebody or some group of people, and I think that this really plays into all the race things that have been happening in the last few weeks, those judgments will prevent you from simple acts of kindness because there is a deserving factor. How many people have watched Afterlife? Those of you I can see, raise your hand if you want to raise your hand. So Afterlife is this great series that Ricky Gervais has made, and it's English. And it's about what happens to somebody who doesn't believe in an afterlife, but then loses their wife. So the afterlife is really the life that he's living after his wife dies. And he said this quote, it's kindness I have a problem with. I don't deserve it. And I was so struck by that. I was so struck by that. Like how many of us push kindness away because we feel that we don't deserve it. And so this is where I got interested and really started to go down the rabbit hole. It's like, okay, how does deserving kindness, where did that come from? How did that get into our psyche? When did we learn that kindness was something that you had to earn? Here's another quote that I just loved. And I don't know who wrote this. It was just a meme I saw. There was no author. You are personally responsible for becoming more ethical in the society you grew up in. And I just loved that. I absolutely loved that. You are personally responsible for becoming more ethical than the society you grew up in. We grew up in a society that, let's face it, was rather naive. Those of us who went through the 50s and the 60s and the 70s, we began to kind of wake up in the 60s and the 70s, and then we fell asleep in the 80s and 90s. And then now we've been kind of waking up again in a much less comfortable way. And I like the fact that I'm responsible for being more ethical than the society I grew up in, because the society I grew up in was quite racist. There was a certain sense of entitlement. There were rules that if you followed them would get you specific results, and I didn't question those. I didn't question those until I left home and started making my own choices and saying, oh, that's what happens when you don't do what you're told, or that's what happens when you go against the norm. And for me, it was perfect. It was freedom. It was great. But a lot of my siblings are, have never questioned kind of the information that we were given from growing up in the 50s. And I struggle with that because I feel like they're in that whole kindness is, some of them are in this kindness is either deserved or not deserved. So I don't have to be kind to you if you don't deserve my kindness. And again, going back to that deserving thing, where did that come from? So I'm a big believer in questioning your beliefs, going to the very basic beliefs that you have and saying, why do I believe this? And where did I first hear it? Okay, why do I believe this? Where did I first hear it? So kindness is considered a commodity, in my opinion, in this culture. Kindness is a commodity, right? It has value, and it can be withheld or given depending on the person who has it. So it's a commodity. And you can earn kindness from other people by acting in specific ways, acting or doing specific things. So let me just gather my thoughts here for a moment. Okay, I like to think of myself as a kind person, but I also know that there are times when I'm not kind. And so I started to look at that and say, what is the thing that keeps me from being kind? And you know what it was? When I'm self-absorbed, feeling entitled, or I'm angry at myself. Self-absorbed means whatever's happening with me is way more important than what's happening outside of me. So I can walk through, so I can be unkind because I'm so focused within, I'm not paying attention to what's going on outside of me. And I don't take that extra moment to meet somebody's eye and smile. I just walk by them and don't see them at all. I don't see them at all because I'm so wrapped up with my own stuff. Is that unkindness? Maybe not, but it's definitely not kindness. Kindness, which is how I like to go through life, is when I meet people's eye, whether they're homeless sitting on the street or they're the cashier in the store, I meet their eye, I smile. Sometimes I say, I love your hair, your earrings are great, that's a fabulous dress, or, I hope you have a nice day. I don't engage outside of myself when I'm self-absorbed. So I've learned to be self-absorbed at home. Do my work and then go out in public. Okay, the second thing where kindness doesn't come out is when I'm feeling entitled. And I do feel entitled because I grew up as a middle-class white person. There are places that I feel entitled, and I catch myself constantly in that sense of entitlement and realize that from that place, I'm not being kind at all. And I'm like, ooh, you got to, okay, catch yourself, stop yourself. So I've been really looking for the places where I have grown up with, hello, kitty, where I've grown up feeling entitled, because that stops my heart from interacting with the world in that moment of entitlement. Last, though, and probably the most critical, and I think this is where most of us fall into withholding kindness, is when we're angry with ourselves, when we're not being kind to ourselves, when we're not happy with our story. So I've been, journaling and talking to the ancestors, and a couple nights ago they woke me up. I keep a notebook when I'm doing this work because they always wake me up, and if I don't have a notebook and write it down, I don't remember it. And so they're like, get your notebook. And they said, ultimately, the relationship that you have with your body determines how kind you can be. How kind are you to your body? So that made me start to really question and ask some things. And I realized that, especially since we've been on lockdown and I haven't been able to go to the gym, I have been really unhappy with I've been very unkind to my body, because it says I could just go for a walk and I'm like, yeah, it's too cold, it's too windy, I don't want to go for a walk, whatever. And then instead I'll go eat a cookie. That's not being kind. My body has specifically asked me for something that it wants, and I'm ignoring it. So I started looking at, particularly since the lockdown, how easy it was for me to fall back into the habit of being unkind to myself. And that is definitely learned behavior. I learned at a very early age not to be kind to myself. And as if any of you have gone through therapy or therapy, you learn who those voices in your head are that are critical. And most often it comes from your parents or some peer when you were younger. So those critical voices in your head can prevent you from being kind to yourself because you don't deserve it. Again, it's a deserving issue. When we have a deserving issue with ourselves about whether we deserve to be kind to ourselves or not, it becomes hugely easy to be kind outside of yourself, right? It doesn't take that much work to be kind outside of yourself. How much work does it take to be kind to yourself, though, on a regular basis, 24/7? That to me is the ultimate work that we're here to do, is to, people talk about loving yourself. That's a hard concept for me. I have a really hard time with like loving yourself or loving people around you, because honestly, I don't know what that looks or feels like. What I do know is how to be kind and compassionate. I do know what that looks and feels like. So if I can start there, then the love comes. The love comes when I'm happy with myself. Then my field, I was watching Dr. Zach, what's his last name? Anyway, he's this fabulous MD in Hawaii that I'm completely smitten with at this moment, because he's so smart about how we all fit into the biome of the planet. And he was asking that question. He was saying that, I wanted to love my wife more. I wanted to love my children more, but I didn't know how to do that. And I didn't know. And then he was talking to one of his teachers. And the teacher said, it's not about love. It's about reverence. It's about reverence. And I was like, oh my God, that's so true. So many of us have never had the experience of pure unconditional love. So how would we know how to emulate that and give it back, or even ask for it? Because we've always had conditional love. There's very few times in your life that you'll get unconditional love. One is from small children and another is from pets. And that's pretty much it. Adults always have conditional love. It's just something that we're here working through. But reverence is easy for me to go, I know what that feels like. I know what that looks like. Okay, so if I could see reverence in these people, then you enter the field of love energy. Okay, Love being a field, not a thing. Love being a field, not a feeling. Love is a field. And how you get to that field is through reverence. So we start with ourselves. How do we show reverence to ourselves? The chat is open. I'd love to see if anybody could answer that question. How do you show reverence to yourself? If you can write me an answer, we'll go on from there. Or I'll ask this question. How could reverence to yourself look? What would that look like for you? If you're willing to be part of the chat thing and let me walk through your answer with you, I would really appreciate it. So far, I'm not seeing anything. But Gary has to.
Hi, Kat. Hi, it's Susie Queen.
Hi, Susie.
Hi. I don't actually know how to put my face on.
Is your camera on?
Start video?
Yes.
Oh, there
she is.
Good morning, everybody. I'm so glad you're talking about this, and it's so timely. And I don't, I mean, I'm like, I hear those questions and I go, fuck, somebody else goes first, And so I guess starting with how could it look? And I mean, can you read the definition of reverence?
Oh, I'd have to look it up.
Actually, I could in my phone if it's easier.
Yeah, otherwise I have to get out of Zoom and.
Yeah, would everybody like that? Everybody want to hear that? Yeah, okay.
I already have it up, and it's deep reverence for someone or something.
But they don't say actually what the word reverence means.
No.
That's it?
Respect.
Revere. It comes from revere, right?
Okay, yep. I believe when we were talking about that you were going to paint this in Uptown,
right.
We came up with solidarity through reverence, right? And I think at that time we did look up reverence, and I think what we came to was awe and respect.
Yeah.
Awe and respect. And look at how awe has disappeared from our life since we were children. Everything, we were in awe of everything, right? And now it's like, okay, we go to some famous place in the world that's breathtaking, and maybe you have a moment of awe. But what happened to awe in everyday life? I want that feeling. I want to feel awe. And so I think part of that is you have to go look for it, right? You can't sit in your house and look at a computer screen and watch what's happening and find awe. You have to go out and look, like crawl around on the ground and find the tiniest little flower and see how it's actually made and how it grows and what its relationship is to, the leaves and the stem. And then you can start to feel awe. Like I feel that getting back into nature is a way for us to remember how that feels, and then focus it on yourself. Susie, do you have any suggestions about that part?
I mean, that's really true. First of all, nature, being out in nature. I find that can solve so many of the cobwebs or the traps that, or the patterns I might be in. I'm sorry, I'm trying to get back to the reverence, but I also find that nature is so huge in that. And then you can find reverence.
Yes.
When you've allowed nature to be in your vision and in your body, going barefoot on the ground, touching the textures, listening to the sounds. And I find it when I do that, have those quiet times, I feel reverent. Is that how I would use that word?
Yes.
That feeling comes. That's very interesting. I hadn't actually traveled through that, but that is a peace that comes over. I mean, would you all agree that you have that peace that can come over you, that nature reconnects our ability as these animals to feel, because we've got all this going on all the time, you know.
Yeah.
And since you and I talked, Kat, I was thinking about how you were describing this new doctor in your life, and how he kept trying to love his wife
Love his wife more.
more, and he just like, you know, that just seems really elusive at times, and I understand. And you described it well in your life. You know, it wasn't something you really know how to do. Most people, I think, it's a massive question, and it just seems to go around and around. But then you said that he came up with reverence, which is, that brings in respect and
And awe.
and putting, as you said, putting yourself outside of yourself. It's no
Right.
longer.
Right.
And,
Right.
and so I thought that I've just been thinking about it ever since as well. And for me personally, I tend to do both to myself. Both are going on at the same time.
Both what? Reverence and
Reverence and, oh my God, you should.
oh, criticism. Okay. Yeah. Yeah. It's the voices of criticism that are the most destructive, and that are they're in the way of kindness. And the other thing is, any of you who've seen my other work know, thank you, Susie, by the way.
Yeah.
I'm really all about emotion, right? Like, you have to be fluid with emotion, and every time you repress emotion, it comes back at you in some other way. That is not fun. And so one of the things that I realize is that if you're holding repressed emotion, if you're holding guilt, if you're holding shame, if you're holding pain that happened to you a long time ago and you just don't ever want to think about it again, those things are literally filling up the energetic space in your body, and there isn't enough room for true kindness to come out. What the ancestors, and when they speak to me, they don't tell me in words. I get these kind of downloads that include feelings and visuals. And they showed me this the other night and gave me this feeling that true kindness comes as a result of you loving your own story, loving your life, loving the story that you're living, loving the story that you created, loving your body. Even if you have nothing, if you are loving where you are, kindness is a natural outflow of that. It's not an action that you do. It is a field that goes out and touches everybody that you come in contact with. And so they said, kindness has been defined as a noun. It's a thing you can give or a thing you can get. But it's really like love. It's a field that you can walk into and walk out of, or that you can generate and share, right? So we have to, I think, do a little bit of exploration within ourselves. And first of all, say, how am I being kind to myself? Or how am I being unkind to myself? Secondly, what are the voices that I hear the most? Are they voices of criticism or are they voices of praise? If they're voices of criticism, this is where we get to face our demons. I think some of the best work that white people can do right now is face their emotional demons and take care of them, so that that energy is not going out into the environment and adding gasoline to a flame that's already burning, right? We have to take charge of that anger that we're feeling, or that shame that we're feeling, or that rage that we're feeling, we have to open that box up, explore it, look at it, and then do something about it. And those of you who know my work know that that's what my book is about. Here's how to unpack your emotional baggage and clear it up and clean it out. And then what you've done is that you've opened up a space where the voices of praise can come in, the voices of reverence, the voices of awe. You can see the world a different way. Your eyes change when you are looking at the world while criticism's going on in your head. What are your eyes seeing when criticism is constantly going in the background? Your eyes are seeing things to be critical about. Okay? What are you seeing when voices are so happy with your choices and how you do things, and the way, oh, it says my internet connection is unstable. So did I freeze?
We
Okay.
lost you for a minute, but you're back.
Yeah,
Right. Phew.
just when you said, and I'd love to hear something you were starting to say, what are you, what was she saying, you guys? When you hear when you are criticizing yourself. So take it from there.
Okay. So when the voices of criticism are going on in your head, your eyes see things to be critical about. It changes your vision. Whereas when the voices in your head are proud of you and are saying, good job, that was really an adult thing to do. That was a loving thing to do. I'm so happy you broke that pattern. Your eyes see things with kindness, with love, with compassion, because you're being kind to yourself first. So I think that in terms of kindness, it has to start within. It has to start here and then move out as a field, not as an act, but as an energy. Not as an act, but as an energy. So again, first thing is, where are those critical voices coming from? Who do they belong to? Why are they still in your head? Why haven't you evicted them? I say this at 66 years old, still trying to evict some of those. It is an ongoing challenge. Let's see, somebody just sent me a chat that I think, oh, it's from, kindness is an everyday byproduct of all the great virtues, is at once the simplest and most weighty discipline human beings can practice. But it is the stuff of moments. It cannot be captured in declarative sentences or conveyed by factual account. It can only be found by looking attentively at ordinary, unsung, endlessly redemptive experience. And that's by Krista Tippett. That's lovely. I like that. It can't be captured in declarative sentences or conveyed by factual account. It can only be found by looking attentively at an ordinary, unsung, endlessly redemptive experience. So part of I don't deserve kindness might come from, I'm an ordinary person living a very ordinary life. I'm not extraordinary. I don't do extraordinary things. Therefore, I don't, kindness isn't for me. Other people need it more than I do. So that's another thing I've noticed is in the consumer culture, there's a certain underlying myth that if somebody is suffering far worse than you, then you don't deserve to be happy. Your happiness is somehow at the expense of someone else. And that is imprinted in us. I went to a Catholic school. That was imprinted in us from the very first, from kindergarten. You should not, and that suffering was revered. Suffering was revered. My mom said it best about 7 years ago. She said to me, "We are all sinners here to suffer." And I was like, "What? She said, that's why we're here. We were all put on this earth to suffer. And I was like, man, I'm so glad I don't live in your reality. But for her, that was the basis of her religion, was the more she suffered, the closer to God she got to be. So all of these things that are in the way of happiness and kindness and compassion, these are our ancestral imprints, which they have shown come down, get passed down generation after generation through your DNA. And I believe part of why we're here, right now, in this magical time, is that the ancestors would like to break those patterns. They would like us to break those patterns so that we can recreate a new world here that really is built on love, that's built on compassion, that's built on reverence, that's built on kindness. And that means we have to examine every single thing we believe is true and decide if we want to maintain that belief. Do we want to keep feeding it? Do we want to keep it? Or do we want to let it go and replace it with something else? I had a friend, and we used to do this ritual where we built this big fake plug and a big fake socket. And then we'd write down like which belief systems we no longer chose to carry forward. And so we name that belief system, and then we pull the plug out of the socket. Well, I guess we had 2 sockets. And then we would take the belief system that we were going to replace it with and plug it into the other socket. And we thought we were so smart that we did like 50 of these at one ritual. And I got to tell you, my life was hell for the next 3 years, because every single one of those beliefs that I said I wasn't going to carry forward anymore was like banging up there, demanding attention, because it's like, I'm valid. Don't get rid of me. Let me show you how valid I am. And so of course my life was just chaos. So if you're going to do that, just do one belief system at a time and work with it until you feel like you've managed the swap. Don't try to do them all at the same time. But it does really work, because if you can identify the belief that you see that you're holding that isn't working for you, that is holding you back, that is keeping you from the voices of respect and reverence, then you have to do something about it. You have to change it. And the ancestors are lined up on the other side of the veil right now, just waiting to help you. All you have to do is ask them and say, I would like some help with this. And they'll get on it. You don't even have to think about it after that. Like, they'll be on it. If you are struggling because you have to find a place to live, write it out very specifically what it is that you need. Put it on your altar or burn it, whatever, and just say to your ancestors, I need help with this. And then let it go. They'll take care of it. They'll help you. They're very powerful right now. And they would like us to change the beliefs that we've inherited that are not taking us down the road of love. Part of the chaos we're seeing in the world right now is the old belief systems crumbling and falling, and we don't have a lot of new ones yet ready to put in there. Why is that? Because our imagination has been engaged in fear. Our imagination has been co-opted through the way that we've learned to take in information. We have been co-opted to look at the things that are the most frightening, the things are the most terrible. I call it violence porn. It's become pornographic now because we post all these terrible images of people doing terrible things to each other, and we're horrified by it, but there's some part of us that wants more, keeps wanting more, keeps wanting more, keeps wanting more. And so part of what we're being asked to do right now is to take our imagination away from the fear, away from we are being directed every moment of every day. Where are we being directed? COVID's going to kill you, or the riots are going to burn your house down, right? Think of how much energy in the past 3 months have been going in those directions. And how many people have that's their whole focus now is, oh my God, I'm going to get COVID. Oh my God, I'm going to get sick. Oh my God, I can't leave the house. Oh my God, somebody's going to burn my house down. Where's your imagination That's your most important asset right now, is your imagination. How can you reclaim your imagination? And then how can you put it into use in a community? We need communities of people who are coming together, who are saying, here are some ways we can make change right now. That will be quick, that will be fast, that will be easy, and we can all do it at the same time. And I've been going through my Facebook and tossing off tons of people who are only interested in focusing on the fear. I'm like, this is not helpful for me or anybody else. So now my Facebook feed is filled with people saying, look at this thing that I found, or how about this idea, or here's some ways that this country did this, or here's some ways that this city did this, or here's some ways that we could be helpful, or here. And it's fabulous, because all of a sudden there's this energy and there's this imagination and there's this sense of history. Like we are in this moment where we can make history, and we can do it really, really well if we evict these voices that are constantly criticizing us, and if we can take back our imagination and invest it in things that excite us, in things that are about equality and fairness and exciting ways of living with nature as a partner. You know, wouldn't it be fun to live in a community that looked like the Hobbits' village? You know, I remember once somebody said, way back in the 90s, somebody said, Steven Spielberg should be given control of public housing, because if he built public housing to look like Hobbit houses or, you know, fantasy sets, how much more enjoyable would people be who lived in those places? How much better would they feel that they were living in a place that was whimsical and magical? How magical could we feel if we lived in a magical place like that? You know, it's so interesting that public housing, like prisons, like schools, they take all the magic out of it, right? It's just pragmatic, it's practical, and it's cheap, and it's ugly. You can't live in ugly all of your life and not feel ugly and not act ugly. We have to have magic. We have to have whimsy. We have to have reverence. And so I think it all kind of ties in together, is how can we individually bring our own sense of magic and our own sense of play and our own sense of whimsy into these conversations about how to change things? And I am a big proponent of, we have to bring nature in as an equal partner too. Nature should have a seat at the table in every conversation. Every conversation. So, all right. Let's see what else I have, and let's see what time it is. It's 11:08. Just so you know, there's a virtual offering on here. So normally if we were doing this in person, like at 11:15, I'd be like, okay, we're gonna pass the bucket. Since we're not doing that, the bucket is always open. So please feel free to donate to Lake Harriet Spiritual Community. We love having them in our neighborhood and access to all the fabulous stuff. Okay. Here's a quote by Carl Jung that I really liked. To love someone else is easy, but to love what you are, the thing that is yourself, is just as if you were embracing a glowing red hot iron. It burns into you, and that is very painful. Therefore, to love somebody else in the first place is always an escape, which we all hope for, and we all enjoy it when we are capable of it. But in the long run, it comes back on us. You cannot stay away from yourself forever. You have to return, have to come to that experiment to know whether you can really love. That is the question, whether you can love yourself, and that will be the test. So even Carl Jung back then knew that it was coming back to the self and loving the self that would put love out into the world. And as we all know, the most violent people out there are people who hate themselves. It's so easy to see self-hatred on the face of people who are hurting others, if you're looking for it. And then here's another quote that came right after Carl Jung, which I really like, and I don't know who wrote this. Again, it was on a meme. Yes, love yourself, but also analyze and be critical of how you think, act, and behave. Self-love without self-awareness is useless. Be accountable. And I think that that's maybe why we have such a hard time with self-love, because we're trying to self-love on top of these layers upon layers upon layers of judgment and trauma from our ancestors and lessons that we learned when we were too young to argue about them. And so we're on top of all that. We're like, oh, I want to love myself. I want to love myself. It's like, no, it's sort of like the compost pile. The best stuff is at the bottom. You gotta go through the whole thing and turn it over and look at it and be like, oh, this shouldn't have been in here. Oh, who threw the lemon peels in here? That shouldn't be in a compost pile. You go through, and what you find at the very bottom is you find the gold, right? That's the most nutritious and the most beautiful dirt is at the very bottom of the compost heap. So let's take this opportunity, this historic moment, to say, I can be the most effective person in my community right now by doing work on myself in ritual. Because what ritual does is that it sends what you're doing out to the collective. And that's why ritual is so important. So if you have a little ritual, even if it's just you light a candle or you have a picture of a loved one next to you, an ancestor, and you start by asking the question, what things about myself don't I like? Or what things about myself do I hate? And just start answering that question. What things about myself don't I like? And then why don't I like those? Just that question alone might be enough for a month of journaling. Because we probably all have more than one thing we don't like about ourselves, right? I'm just going to check in with the chat. Okay, so Tom says, I can relate to kindness, but reverence is a bit vague. You've been to Machu Picchu? Did you feel reverence? Is your mic on, Tom? No? Gary, can we get Tom's mic on?
I think I just turned it on.
There he is. Okay. All right.
I didn't.
So did you feel reverence at Machu Picchu?
I didn't make it to Machu Picchu, but I get the thing. I'm trying to put reverence into action because I can reverently be kind to people, and I do that daily. And I just kind of confused a little bit.
Well, if you're already practicing it, then I don't think there's any problem.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Yeah, I'll go with that.
Okay, just go with that.
Thanks, Kat.
You're welcome. Okay, and then somebody else said, kindness. Oh wait, I've already spoken that one. Okay.
And Kat, somebody asked, what is the title of your book and where is it available?
Oh, here it is right here. I don't know, is that coming out right, or is it backwards?
No, we can see it.
Okay, Secret Language of Emotion. And you can get it on my website, which is www.emotionaltechnologies.com. And it is a primer. It's a basic how-to book about how to understand what emotions are for, why you have them, what their purpose is, and how to take them from an immature state, which they will always present as, into an evolved state, which is what they want. Emotions come through to you because they want to be evolved. It's that simple. And I spent over 20 years figuring out, researching and teaching, and then getting feedback and continuing all these different things until I figured out what exactly was the process of evolving an emotion and why do we have immature emotions. Like that was really what started it, was why do I feel this way and why do I act this way when I'm angry or when I'm sad. And then when I realized that it's a process of evolution, that part of what we're going through right now is this ascension process, right? The earth is moving up in frequency and we're going with her. And so we have this opportunity to ascend to a higher vibration of being, but we are not going to get there if we're carrying our ancestors' loads of traumatic emotion that's buried deeply within our bodies. And so, how are we doing on time? 11:15. Okay. So that's kind of how I'm going to leave that. We're going to do an exercise after that, but that's how I'm going to leave it with you, is to just maybe do, if you have like a daily meditation or daily pages or just a daily check-in, to just every day say, what's a critical voice saying today? And then have a conversation with that critical voice. I like to really ask my voices, like, why are you so mean to me? And it's amazing sometimes what will come out. One time I was on this camping trip in the desert, and it was the winter, and I do this a lot. I'm like, I'm going camping in the desert this for my birthday. And so, I had been there twice before, but not in the dead of winter. So I just packed as though I was going like I had done before. Of course, I get there, it's freezing cold and my sleeping bag's covered with ice every day. And anyway, I had this experience that really triggered me into a complete and total breakdown in the middle of the wilderness. And I'm screaming at myself. I'm screaming out loud and I'm screaming, and out of my mouth comes this whole like, I hate you. I can't believe you made me come here. I didn't want to come here. I wanted to stay home. It's Christmas. Why aren't we at home? And literally the part of me, like, who's always been like the brave adventurer and planning all this stuff and taking action and going on these great adventures and vision quests, I was like, what? And this other voice was just screaming and screaming and crying. Like, I just wanted to be home. I didn't want to come here. And I had no idea. And I was like, oh man, I guess I got some voices in here not communicating with each other. And that was right about the beginning when I started doing this work. And so I realized that was my masculine and feminine sides. And it was the masculine who loved like putting into motion all these things, but it was the feminine that always got stuck with the logistics. How am I going to have enough groceries to eat in the desert for a week? How am I going to have water? How am I going to do this? How am I going to do that? That was the feminine that got stuck with the logistics. And so she was pretty upset. And so as I began to have conversations between those two sides of myself, over the next few years, they came into a place where I don't feel them separated anymore. They're that part of myself is now very coherent. But it might be interesting for you to ask some questions and to see what answers you get from that. So, is there anybody that has anything to ask before we go into the little physical exercise?
And if people know how to raise their hand in chat, that comes up to the top so I can unmute them.
I'll just see if anybody.
And I'm passing on the chats to you, so.
Yep, I'm just looking.
So there's nothing new on there. Oh, do have Tom has his hand up. So
Tom has his hand up. All right.
Hi, Kat. I had a similar experience. I was in a meditation group, and I was having a lot of time. Having a difficult time slowing down enough. My brain was going and going and going, and I couldn't get into my meditation groove. And I talked to the yogi about it, and he said something really interesting. He said, okay, before you meditate, talk to your brain, your mind, and say, listen, I know you're there. I can hear you talking. I just want to meditate for a little bit and I want to go down and have good meditation. I hear you. I promise I'll get back to you. And it worked. It freaked me out.
Yeah. Yeah.
Amen. Over.
Yes, thank you. And oftentimes when I'm teaching rage work, I'll say to people, if you get triggered someplace where it's not possible for you to do rage work, then you can promise that feeling. It's like, I will deal with you when I get home and it's safe, and I'll do rage work in the garage or whatever. But if you do that, you have to follow up on it, because because it will subside and then the urgency to do it goes away. But what happens then is that begins to bubble up, and the next time you get angry about something, it adds to that. And at some point there'll be a moment where you're not going to be able to hold it back and you blow up, and maybe you say something or do something that afterwards you're absolutely horrified, like, how, oh my God, why? And then there's repercussions because people see it. So it's the same thing with emotion. Make dates with yourself to get back and deal with your feelings as soon as you possibly can. You know, sometimes when I'm driving, I just go, why are you so mad? Because I'll be like, somebody will cut me off and I'll swear, and I'll be like, why are you so mad? And then I wait to see what comes out. And it's always, I'm mad at myself for something. It's always, I'm mad at myself. When I can't stop crying, then I say, why are you crying? And there'll be a lot of like, oh, this is happening, or that's happening, or that thing, that story, or whatever. But then as I go further and further, what often comes up is that the grief that I felt as a little child, when I realized that the world I was living in was cruel and vindictive and there was no magic.
Yeah,
And
magic.
I didn't want to be alive. And so that feeling was still living in me. And by kind of going through the layers of grief, I got to the bottom of it. And I was like, oh, honey, the world is way magic now. Let's go look at it. And so I was able to, but if I wouldn't have done that lasagna layering of going through the compost pile, right, and getting down to what is the bottom part of that grief, what is really the base of that grief, it was the belief that I was born into a world where there was no magic and people were cruel. And that was the way life was. So sometimes those old beliefs are so deeply hidden that it takes some questions and answers before you can really get to the bottom of them. And then you can make that shift and say, oh no, let's go outside and look at how reverent the world is, or look with reverence at the world and see how awesome it is and how magical it is. Okay. I think, so Karen Kellogg. She just actually sent earlier in the hour, sent me exactly what we're going to be doing. Something she does after meditation that we're going to be doing today. So, so here's what we're going to do. Get yourself in a comfortable spot, sit in a comfortable spot, close your eyes. And we're going to go down to the bottom of our feet. We're going to start with our toes. And I want you to think about if you've ever injured your toe, a toe or your toes, if you've ever had an injury there, or you've ever had anything happen with your toes that hung you up. And just think about, just take your attention to your toes and thank them. Thank them for giving you balance, for being able to grip, climb, run, jump. Focus reverence and kindness on your toes. Think about the awe of having toes that I can pick up things with my toes. I don't know if you can do that, but I can pinch with my toes. That's pretty awesome. Think about how amazing it is to have toes that can do so many things and that can help you stay in balance. So we're going to send our toes lots of gratitude and lots of kindness and lots of love. And then we're going to come into the whole foot. And think about any time in your life where your foot might have been injured and unable to work. And how did you feel about it? Were you angry with your foot? Were you frustrated with your foot? Were you frustrated with your body? Did you feel like your body and you were not on the same page? And now flood your foot, flood your feet. The things that take you through life, that move you forward, flood them with reverence and awe and kindness and appreciation and gratitude. Thank you for always being there for me. Thank you for holding me up. Thank you for moving me through life. Thank you for dancing. Thank you for climbing. Thank you for roller skating. Thank you for running. Whatever your feet have been for you, thank them. And now let's move up into our calves. Think about the work that your calves do, pushing you up and down stairs, up and down hills. Think about the strength in that part of your leg, how they hold those long bones in place. Think about how much work that part of your leg has done to move you through life. And now express gratitude, express awe, express appreciation, be kind. If it helps you to pat the parts of your body that we're talking about, you can do that. Put your hands on them. Give them love through your hands as well. Now let's think about that whole part of your leg from your knee down to your toes. Truly a magnificent, amazing geometry that moves us through life. How much this part of our body has worked to keep us moving forward. And how much we appreciate that, how much we love them, how much we care that they'll be with us till the very end in full health and happiness. And then let's go up to our, our quads, upper part of our leg from our hip to our knee. And think about how much that part of your body is called upon to sit, to stand, to sit, to stand, to sit, to stand. If you work at a desk, how many times a day are you getting up? That part of your body is responsible for getting you up. And it's connected to your hips. Let's give that part of our body great appreciation, great love, reverence and awe. And then we come to the hips and the pelvis and the amazing pelvic bone, how your hips and your legs fit together, how your hips can move and twist and turn, how you can bend, how you can straighten up, how you can sit, how you can stand, how you can swivel and swirl and dance and move. And we love our hips. We love our hips. And if at any time you've been injured in your hips, go into that injury, even if it's been healed. Go into that injury and apologize if you've ever been unkind. If you've ever thought, oh, my body's just trying to sabotage me. Oh, I hate my body. Oh, I wish I had a different body. If you've ever had those thoughts, go into your hips and apologize. And give them love and acceptance. This is my body. This is my temple. I can be kind. I can be reverent. I can treat it with respect. It's my choice. And now let's come up into our heart. And go in and look inside and see all the scars. See all the scar tissue on your heart. Sometimes our hearts are so scarred that they just look like steel plates are around them, rusty steel plates holding them in place. And so if you have any rusty steel plates around your heart, or even if you just have scar tissue that's really hard and old, let's just soften that. Let's just soften that. Let's just pour some some lubricant of awe, some lubricant of reverence onto our heart, and then watch those steel plates loosen up, wiggle back and forth, and finally drop off. And see that scar tissue get soft, get pink, and then heal. And now here's your heart, this beautiful pink and green bud peeping out from the safety of the lungs. Feeling completely protected, feeling completely respected, feeling completely taken care of, and knowing that it can get as big as it would like with complete confidence. And then let's go to our lungs, which take life in every single breath. And we take in a big, deep breath of life. And we feel our lungs expand and bring life in, and then contract and blow out everything that is not healthy for us. And we breathe in health, and we breathe out non-health. Bring in health, we breathe out non-health. And thank your lungs for every single minute of the day breathing without you having to even think about it. Just does it. Same with your heart. Beats from the moment you're born, from the moment you're conceived until the moment you die. Your heart beats without any effort on your part. Think about how beautiful that geometry is. That's your body. And then let's think about our neck. Come to your neck. If you have issues with your neck, it indicates an inability to see in all directions. So when our imagination is stuck, we will often have neck pain. So if you have neck pain, apologize to your neck for your lack of imagination or having your imagination locked into fear or into a story that's not serving you. And simply promise your neck that you're going to start imagining better stories, better endings. And then let's go to our arms. Our arms, which are about holding and being held. And hold yourself. Thank your arms for their ability to hold you and to hold others. And to pick things up, to be able to carry, to be able to move things. Our beautiful, beautiful arms. And our beautiful hands. Think about how much your hands have handled in life. How much handling your hands have done. Thank your hands, love your hands. Feel the awe. If you could see the skeletons of your hands, how many little tiny bones are in your hands? So many. And how they all fit together perfectly. And finally, let's go to our head. Our face, which we show the world each and every day. Our hair, which reads information from the energetic field. Our ears, which allow us to hear. Our eyes, which allow us to see. Our mouth, which allows us to taste the goodness of life, take in the things that nourish us and please us. And now we thank our whole body. We apologize if we've ever been mean to our body, if we've ever told it or given it messages that it wasn't wanted, that it wasn't quite good enough, that it didn't work the way it was supposed to. We apologize. I'm sorry. Please forgive me. I love you. I'm sorry. Please forgive me. I love you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you for getting me here where I am today. Thank you for being here at this most momentous time in human history. Thank you for being here and allowing me to be part of an evolutionary process. Thank you for being my key to move through this evolutionary process. That if I can move through you, my body, with gratitude, with joy, with forgiveness, with understanding, with love, then I will impact the world around me more powerfully than any action I could take outside of myself. And let's take another deep breath in. And come back into the room. Well, I'd like to thank everybody who was here today. This is my first time doing a Zoom with a large group like this, and it's actually more fun than I thought it would be because I can see all these little pictures of people on here. And those of you who I can't see, I can see your names. So I am very appreciative that you came. If you would like a copy of my handout, just send me an email. If you go to my website, it's emotionaltechnologies.com. There's a contact me page on there, and just send me an email if you'd like a PDF of today's. It's just really the notes I made for today, but I know sometimes people would like to have those notes, I believe. And thanks for sharing this beautiful morning with me. I'm flattered that you all chose to sit at your computer to do this, and it was a pleasure. Thank you very much.